All right, I'm back. So our next speaker, it's kind of fun. There have been 4 or 5 former clients that have been up speaking, so it's always an honor to introduce people that we've worked with in the past. So this is Soon Yu. If you were here last year, you saw him because he was in this role. So he was up on stage a lot. He's the former Global Vice President of Innovation at VF. And during his time there, he created $2 billion, north of $2 billion worth of value. He has a degree in electrical engineering that he has never used. He's got a book coming out at the end of the year about iconic brands and how they stay iconic. And here's something you wouldn't know about him. He actually was the lead singer, I'm not making this up, he was the lead singer for an Asian funk band, even though he only had a 1 octave singing range. I'm so out of breath. Well, give it up for Soon Yu.
Hey guys, as Mike said, I had the privilege of sort of chairing the event last year, and I know how much work and how much sacrifice it takes to actually get on the phone with all speakers beforehand, get to know them, and then to do what he's doing the last 3 days. So I do want to take a second, and if you could join me in just thanking him for all of that. Thank you for having me back. I actually, it's so funny, I was asked by Kelly, who's one of the main organizers for this event, to speak again, and I said, are you sure? The crowd is probably very sick of me. She goes, well, let me pick a topic where, one where we don't get a lot of speakers on, and if you're willing to do that, then can you come back? And I said, sure. So I picked a topic, and you guys know, it's up there right there, it's about failure, right? The funny thing is, this last week I've been spending a lot of time talking to a bunch of you guys about this topic, and I've come to a realization, most of what I'm going to share with you guys today, you've all experienced, you all know about, and so maybe what we'll say today is sort of a culmination of your insights that have fed into this presentation. And maybe what you'll do with this is take it back and share it with your teams, the new members on your teams, as a way to help them do what you guys already do pretty well, which is fail. Now, let me explain something. I actually did this talk sort of as a preview with a very prestigious business school, I'm going to say about 3 weeks ago. And at the end of it, you could hear crickets, guys. And I was looking around thinking, God, this just did not land. You know, sometimes you do a presentation, you just look right, you know it didn't land, right? By the way, this is a very prestigious business school. It's located in Palo Alto, right? And it was for a specific group there, their Asian Student Association, okay? And it kind of dawned on me, these are 26, 27-year-old folks, scored 800 on their GMATs, probably scored 1,600 or close to that on their SATs. The biggest failure they may have had, I know this is being so cynical, might have been a B+, that they somehow then used motivation to get an A+, and then all the AP courses that they did. So that's being a bit cynical. Well, so it bombed, okay? So I went back and reflected. Part of that was part of my delivery, part of that was part of the content, so I've revamped it a bit for you guys. But then, as I've been spending time with everyone in the audience and talking to people about this, I actually realized you guys are not them. You lived it, you breathe it. This is what you signed up for if you're an innovator. If you've come to this conference, this is part of what you do. Fail, you know? That is part and parcel for anyone that is coming to this conference, right? And what I love about, I'll say this, FEI is my favorite event all year. You know, I think last year I went to 20, and this year I'll probably end up going to more like 50 different conferences. By far, this is my favorite. Partly it is the great speakers, partly it's the great organizers who I really know and I really like, partly I got to chair, but actually the main reason is every time I come, I meet people that are kindred souls. Would you guys say the same thing? It's kind of nice, right? It's kind of nice to say, I share your pain. I know exactly what you're going through. Yeah, how do we get that damn 50,000 person organization to do what we want them to do? They're so stupid. We're smart, right? But they won't listen to us, right? So anyway, I know it's a long intro to this topic, okay? But I guess what I'm trying to say is this topic we all have signed up for. And so I'm going to share some thoughts on this and hopefully give you guys a few more insights in terms of actually how to take what we do every single day, which is fail, and use it actually as a competitive advantage, okay? With a little reframing, I think we can do that. So, first thing is, let me press the right button here. this is what I want to take us through. There we go. I want to cover a couple dirty secrets about failure. Okay. Acknowledge some ugly truths that actually some of you have shared with me this week. And then once we've gotten through that, understand some of those secrets and those truths, talk about what might be some of the advantages we can get from this idea of failure. Okay. So, dirty secret number one. Let's just start with that. $2 billion. Okay, here's the thing. There's a lot of people that were involved in making $2 billion happen. I was not the only person, obviously. So that's one. But two, unfortunately, there's a lot of pain and experimentation and, quite frankly, failure. And I think I probably cost $3 billion of negative net worth in order to get to $2 billion. I don't know if some of you feel that way, but I definitely felt that way to get to $2 billion. But it's a nice number to put on your resume, right? So that's my dirty secret number one is this. I am a much bigger failure than I am a success. And when I was talking to folks over at Stanford, I don't think they could have said that, okay? Someday in their career they might, but right now I can definitely say that that is part of my life. And the reason I was actually asked to speak about this topic is because I shared my scorecard of failure last year with the group here. I'm going to share it with you again. For those of you who have heard it, please be patient. So it's a bunch of numbers. It's a scorecard. Number 4. Career restarts. Now, this isn't a recruiter calling me up saying, hey, I want you to go to a new industry or take on a new job function. This is basically getting fired, okay? And 6 to 12 months of knocking on doors, either looking for a job or actually looking for funding for some crazy startup. So that's what I meant by restarts. Part of that is because I had to do this. I had to dissolve a bunch of businesses as I started, right? Now, the hardest part about the restarts and the businesses that are being dissolved is this number. I've had to sit across from people that I cared about, that I liked, who signed up for this great vision that we all were subscribing to, and basically say, I'm not sure we're going to make payroll next week, and I think you need to think about how you redistribute your income to pay for juniors college or juniors high school or whatever it might be. Those are tough conversations to have. And obviously, as a result of all of that, a lot of product failures. But this last number, I think some of you probably know this, it seems like a big number, but it's really a small number. Somebody who was here last year can shout it out. Do you know what this is? No one's here last year? So, a couple things about this number. Just so you know, you get an automatic 600 once you get your Social Security number. Okay. So you have to be a pretty bad boy or girl to get down to 300, which is the basement. You cannot go below 300. And for those of you who want to compare notes later in terms of if you hit this, I've hit it twice. Okay? All right. Oh, yeah, you've been there? Okay, give me, oh, yeah, hey, it's Michael, yeah, okay. So anyway, I've hit it twice, all right? So I know a lot about failure. I'm sure you guys do too, but I just want to establish my credibility and, you know, okay, so I'll walk really big on the stage about this. All right, so let's move on from this, right? So here's the good news, right? Everyone tells me this, you know? There's value in failure, right? So I went on the internet, and guess what? I looked it up, and you know what? There's like, I don't know, 20,000 articles about failing and how valuable it is, and I'm just going to sum up these 20,000 and maybe these few bullet points, all right? It teaches you something. Okay, more than success sometimes. Great. It builds character, right? You know, mature, resilience, all that. And it gives you some empathy and some perspective for those who are losers, right? And then lastly, wow, you know, hey, it's a badge of courage to say that I took that risk. Okay, well, you know, so I failed a lot, so I should be pretty happy about all of this, right? Because I've got a lot of value here. Well, here's dirty secret number 2, guys. I'm not saying it's not there. It's just not being mined. And why do I say that? Corollary of dirty secret number 2 is, let's face it, most failure is wasted. The value is wasted. Most people don't like to stay in the state of failure very long. Most people avoid it. Most people don't even want to talk about it. Well, we're not going to do that because that's part of our business, all right? So let's look at some of these ugly truths that keep us from capitalizing on failure. So I had dinner last night at Continuum, great host. If you have not been to the new offices, go. It is such a startup-y office, it's great. But I met this really wonderful guy, somebody who's running sort of innovation for Tom's of Maine, Paul, and he basically summed it up. One of the big ugly truths of failure is this: it sucks. I don't care how many times we do it, every time I've done it, it's not fun. It's not like, oh, I can't wait to fail the next time. It's so fun, right? No, why? Because this is what happens. One, obviously there's disappointment. We had a goal, we had a mission, we didn't accomplish it. That's bad. That's sort of that's par for the course. But then as you get even sort of deeper about it, yeah, sometimes, somebody pokes you at it and you're the cause and you failed, but you get defensive. Have you ever been defensive? Have you ever been sort of like, why did you do that? I didn't do that, somebody else did that. No, but you get defensive, right? It's a little darker. I failed and they didn't. That team internally got all the funding, I didn't. The competitors did this and I should have done that. I know I should have done that. In fact, I had the idea 3 years ago I should have done that. You can get angry sometimes. You ever see that movie? I forgot, it was the guy that Macy or something, but basically he's brought into casinos to sit at blackjack tables because he has a stench of failure, and he's called the cooler, right? Do you ever feel like the cooler? I failed a lot. People don't necessarily want to hang out with me. You can see people run from the hills when your project starts to hit some roadblocks, right? Whereas other projects, they got momentum, and people are like all excited to talk about them, and all of a sudden, people aren't returning your calls. This happened to me a lot. Here's the one that I've had to live with most of my life. And it's really this idea of loss of faith. I grew up with a very judgmental dad, right? Almost everything I did was not good enough, and boy, I didn't want to give him any more ammunition to feel embarrassed about me, which really made me feel very embarrassed. Failure's a tough place to be. It sucks. Thank you, Paul. It does suck. So, here's ugly truth number 2. And that is, because we are so afraid of failure, because it's so painful, that most of us, I think some of you in the room are actually pretty good at this, most of us really suck at failing. What do I mean by that? Well, okay, so let's take a look at the idea of heavy disappointment or heavy grief or all those deep emotions that we were talking about, right? Generally, when you feel something that bad and feel something that deeply, and when you had an epic failure, you kind of have to process it. And I know they talk about stages. I don't think there's actually a sequence, but you do actually have to take some time to process it. But here's the situation when people encounter failure. Right? They want to get to that next game. They want to just erase any idea that we had that loss, right? We want to get to the next win, right? We don't want to worry about this loss, right? And so what do? You go from denial all the way to acceptance. And then you start saying things like this: oh, gosh, I can't be wrong. Can I? No way. So here's the problem with being really good at failure, or actually being really bad at failure, is this. We just don't identify really the source of the failure, because we go from this idea of, no, all the way, hey, I'm done with it, I'm through, I've accepted it, I'm moving on. And part of the problem is, over time, we even start doing this. We start rationalizing. It wasn't really a mistake, it was a learning opportunity, whatever it might be. And I know this really well because I've done over 100 interviews, job interviews, right? Interviewing people for BF and other companies that work for. And I always ask them this question. Name a time you failed and what you learned from it. Real simple question. You'll be surprised that I think the longest was 7 minutes before somebody answered. And then I just said, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll come back, okay? Literally, okay? And, but other people, especially the ones where you can see it's a knee jerk, this is what happens. I call it the blame game. Okay? Oh, yeah, failure. Well, the management team didn't know what they were doing. The leadership was really off. Or, we had a belligerent passenger in the cabin, Right? So you've heard this idea of blaming others, okay? Well, then there's also this. It's almost like the dog ate my homework type thing where, retail traffic's down. We weren't anticipating that. And, the trends were actually saying this and it actually turned that way. Of course, you've heard this one too, where the forecast was at 12% and, for some reason it came at 3% and therefore our project didn't, whatever, right? So I hear a lot of these different so-called reasons for failure, except for the one that's really most important, the one actually I'm really looking for in the interview, which is, where did you fail? Now, I know this too because I do it. I do the blame game. So here's my mea culpa to you guys. I did it to you at the very beginning of this presentation. I romanticized my failure, didn't I? Sounds really cool. I seem like a hip guy that failed like this, hit a 300. Here's the truth, guys. I got fired because I didn't do my job. I didn't know how to manage people. I missed forecasts. I didn't manage a project right. I missed deadlines. I probably lied, unintentionally, but I lied about something. Those are ugly truths. But that's what you need to get to. A lot of my businesses, my eyes were much bigger than, was it stomach or eyes, whatever. One of them was bigger than the other. They were out of bounds, okay? Yeah, I talked really romantically about laying off people, how hard it was. Well, by my third one, I was like tuned out. You get to that point where, you've done enough of them, you're not sensitized. That's awful. Yeah, I've been stubborn many times where I should have killed the damn project, but it was my pet project. Because never had a pet project, right? And yeah, I put money into dumb things, guys, really dumb things. See, here's the issue. Unless you get to that center of where you fail, because that's the only part you can really control. Can you really control other people? Not maybe. Circumstances, very hard. Data's data, guys. This is the way you're going to live, right? You're doomed to repeat the same mistakes unless you look at the part that really matters is you and what you can control. Now, all of you are successful business people because if you weren't, you want to be able to afford the ticket to come here and to wear nice clothes like you have. And whatever company you guys work for, whatever brands, whatever products or services, you would never run the business with your head in the sand, would you? Would you ever go and say, you know what, screw those damn customers, they don't know what they're talking about, let them complain, who cares? Oh, you know what, who needs to innovate? Let's just be complacent, let's just sort of stay steady state, right? And let's not talk about what we're good at. Let's just keep that quiet, okay? All right, well that's basically what we're doing when we don't learn from our failures, guys. And what's the most important business or brand that you actually manage, that you actually have full control of? It's you. So the goal is, how can we take this failure, harness the value of it, and use it as a competitive advantage to be better at who we are as a brand? So let's talk about that. Okay. So, let's go back to that ugly truth. Which one was it? Number 2, or dirty secret. I get these truths and secrets mixed up. But okay, this is a dirty secret. We talked about this. Most failure is wasted. Why? Because people avoid it. They are afraid of it. They don't like to spend time in it. They don't really want to learn from it, right? It's not they don't want to learn it. It just takes time to learn from it. They don't have that time. So we're going to unlock the value of failure. And this is how we're going to do it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use failure to get smarter than everybody else. And then we're going to take that intelligence and we're going to actually use it to actually innovate who we are. And then lastly, there are many times when we are going to hit huge roadblocks, okay? And we're going to use failure, believe it or not, to become more compelling. How does failure make you more compelling? Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so first, let's get smart. So talk about getting smart. We talked about this. You would not manage a business or you wouldn't manage your own brand without getting some good customer feedback. So we've got to get past denial. And the only way to do that, truthfully, is to talk to our customers, right? We've got to get some outside perspectives. Now, look, I was at VF it was 7 years ago when I started. In my first year and a half, I was out selling the vision. Really selling it hard. I had CEOs backing, had money, we had a plan. We had a message, and I was out there hammering. It's 30 different brands, 60,000 people. And I thought I was doing my job, and I thought I was doing it really well. Well, my boss, he's more intuitive than I am, and he started to kind of probe around. He said, you know what, maybe it's time we did a 360. I'm like, well, 360, I don't want to do a 360. We got a lot to do. What do you want to waste time on a 360? Well, thank God we did do a 360. because unfortunately, this was one of the verbatims. 2013, leadership circle, soon you. Specific verbatim, right there. Ouch. This still lives with me. I mean, I'll die with this thought in my head, in terms of, that's not what I wanted. That's not who I thought I was. I was so passionate. I thought it was because of my passion, and energy. And this, I at that time I said, it's a misperception. Let me share something with you guys. There's no such thing as a misperception. It is a perception. And that's real for that person. And so that's how you are really being viewed. Okay? There's nothing mis about that. Thank God I did get that outside perspective, because that was a turning point in my journey at BF. Once I spent time with this, which took about 6 months to sort of pull this together and figure out what to do with this, things did start turning around. And we'll talk about that in a second. Why do you do this? You need customer feedback to identify your blind spots, right? And your gaps. But also, while you're getting this feedback, don't forget to do this. I think we spend too much time thinking about our gaps or weaknesses. Actually spend as much time or more time understanding what your key strengths are. Because ultimately you want to be leveraging those. So there's different ways of getting feedback. I'm going to share two. One is, I call it the drive-by or the daily dose, right? It's this idea that, you are basically in meetings, or you're doing presentations, or you have project milestones that are happening, and you've got people that are basically customers, right? You got your boss, you got teams, you got peers, and all you need to do after a meeting or a project milestone is basically said, hey, what do you think went well in that meeting? Okay, and that's a pretty easy answer. What do you think I could have done better? Oh, well, I can reflect on that. And lastly, don't forget this one. What do you think I could do more of? Okay? That's it. It's really simple. And what's lovely about this is it's frequent and it's informal. Okay? And it's a drive-by. But every once in a while, kind of like we do with big brands, you want to do your annual brand health equity tracker thingy-majig, right? Call that the 360. But it's an annual checkup. And, you involve mentors, advisors, coaches, okay? But what's great is it really gives you a firm understanding of what's really working and what are really some problem areas that you may want to just shore up, okay? By the way, the strategy generally is double down on your strengths and just do enough so it doesn't become an annoyance with your gaps, okay? So minimal investment on your gaps, like point of parity, but double down on your strengths, okay? But at least, and the great thing is, if you're doing frequent drive-bys, it's just like cars, right? If you don't do your frequent oil changes, all of a sudden you go to get your 60,000 and you haven't done any oil changes, that's a bad deal, right? But if you're doing your drive-bys, guess what? Your annual checkups are less severe. So that's how you get customer feedback. Now, there's a payout for doing all this, all right? We are getting smarter. What does getting smarter mean? What's the payout for that? Well, right? Stop repeating the same mistakes, especially the ones where we really are the source of, where it isn't circumstances, it isn't other people, it isn't data, it is us. Okay? And if we do repeat the same mistake, at least we actually see a pattern and understand why. This is very important. Like I said before, knowing who you are in terms of what you're good at and what you're not good at, and taking the strategy of just doing just enough to make what you're bad at not an annoyance or a glaring gap, and spending a lot more time on what you're really good at. Here's another value for doing all this. This one's really important. People forget this one. Because you're in a big corporation, there are people and they matter, okay? You know where you stand with them. You know where you're doing well, and you know the segment of the population you're not doing so well. And guess what? You're probably going to get a little more insight into why they believe what they believe, which is just as important as what they believe. Okay? To me, and to you managing your own brand, what is this? This is competitive intelligence. And the gift of this competitive intelligence is self-awareness. And the trick here is, why is this an advantage? Because like we talked about before, 99% of people won't want this information. It's too painful, it's too hard. But because one, you guys are familiar with failure, and two, you know actually how to harness the value of that failure, you've collected information. What you choose to do with it, that's your own thing. But at least you have the information and you're not sitting there blind like everybody else. As you manage a business, wouldn't you want to have competitive intel? Right. For your own business, same thing. So what do you do with the competitive intelligence? You can actually use it to innovate who you are. Let's talk a little bit about this. Panos was talking a little bit about this earlier, but this idea that, you know, with music and with us, we're never ending. Why would we expect any product to be finished that's always evolving? Well, the same thing is true for us. We're always evolving. So if we take that mindset and we think of ourselves as this, a living prototype. Take that mindset with yourself. And what does that really mean when you're a living prototype? By the way, my wife thinks I look like part of the board. Anyway, so one, it's a continual thing, right? We are always in the process of tweaking ourselves, getting some feedback from people, kind of figure out what's working, not working, and then re-prototyping, okay? We're never going to stay static. Like I said, we're always learning and adapting, and here's what's cool. We're gonna, when we're doing the prototyping part, we're gonna do it so that we're trying to put our best foot forward, okay? But when we're testing, when we're looking for that daily dose or for those drive-bys or for that annual checkup, we actually want to know where the gaps are, but we also want to know what's working, okay? With that, this is the type of mindset you're going to have. We are in the business of failure, guys. But if we take this mindset that we personally are prototype, not just our products and not just our projects, we're going to be a lot less defensive and just more curious about how it might benefit us. What competitive intelligence can we gain that other people do not have? Now, this idea of being a prototype is not new. Other people have talked about themselves as prototypes. I'm going to share one with you. Can you guess who this is? Yell it out if you think you know.
Steve Jobs.
Yes. Who said that? All right, you didn't fail. Good job. Okay. Yeah, Steve Jobs. He was never satisfied with what it was or what it is. He was always looking for the next, including for himself. By the way, I didn't know that his original design for the mouse was a puck. And did you know that the 20th anniversary of the Macintosh was a leather one? I don't know if anyone knew that. Yeah, you can get some head nods. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. So he's our original prototype. So how do you become a prototype? What's the process? Well, the first thing you do is this. It gives you a chance to try new skills out or actually hone the skills you have. It allows you to close the gaps that we talked about, right? Because you're going to monitor what's working, what's not working in terms of what people think about your gaps. More importantly, what you're good at, innovate against that. Okay, so maybe you have subject matter expertise in one area, okay? How else might you innovate there? Sure, you could read more about that. Why don't you build a network of other people who have the same passion for that area? Let's say you're artificial intelligence for cats, and that's your big subject matter expertise. Well, meet the 20 other people in the world who also care about artificial intelligence for cats, right? Okay? Why don't you, live with cats? And then, just think about it. Get real innovative with what your strength is. Expand and go broad and deep with that strength. And then lastly, here's the process. Take stock, which means do those drive-bys, right? And get that information. And then reapply that and continue the process. We treat ourselves like prototypes. We treat our products like prototypes. We have no problems. We have less problems when those fail. Why do we have such an issue when we fail? We are going to fail. Take this mindset and we're going to be less defensive. So here's what I did. I got this feedback, right? Awful feedback. I said, well, damn. So the first thing I needed to do is understand what the feedback was. So here's basically what I was learning. I was a political animal. And what it meant is I was out there selling this vision, this agenda, and this is sort of what came across. I was doing a lot of time convincing you and persuading you and persuading you. I was trying to sell a sort of a bill of goods. Here's my value prop and this is why you need to buy it. And guess what? You either buy it or you don't. Get on the bus or get off the bus, right? And the main result I was looking for was kind of like, almost like a real estate transaction. I got it sold. That was my milestone. That was my mindset when I was trying to sell it. And I kind of looked like that guy, maybe a little more hair, not quite actually, but that's kind of what people visually saw me as. Forget all these words, that's kind of what people saw me as. And I actually like this because I have this photo and I remind myself, don't be this guy. You've been this guy, try not to be this guy, right? So my boss gave me some really great advice. Stephen Dole, I love him. He basically said, let's prototype. Let's, in these next meetings, do the opposite of what you normally do. Opposite? Yeah. Trust me, it's really hard. So instead of convincing and persuading, I went to this idea of, okay, how am I to build influence by doing the opposite? So, in meetings, it started off with 20% of the time I started to listen and had more empathy. But eventually I got pretty good where most of that meeting, I was listening. I was learning how to ask better questions. I was trying to not only listen to what they were saying, but their body language and actually the deeper meaning behind why they were saying what they were saying. I was trying to look for those type of cues. And I kept trying that in meeting after meeting. It was hard to get my question answer, or was it the ear-mouth ratio really? The quote is, you have one mouth, 2 ears, use it that way, right? And I had a hard time. I had like 5 mouths and no ears, right? So it was trying to get that balance right. And then the other thing kind of dawned on me was this. Instead of the value prop and the bill of goods, one of the positive feedback I got in the 360 was actually people really liked the vision. That was not just my vision, it was the CEO's and other people's vision. And they liked the purpose behind it. Who doesn't want to be more innovative? And so I started to reframe against that while I was listening and having empathy. And guess what? I think Panos just talked a little bit about this. Is collaboration and co-creation. I started to realize it's not my vision, it's not my agenda, it's our vision and our agenda. And guess what? Because I'm listening and having empathy, I've got to be able to change and pivot and basically throw out everything I thought was right and reconsider it could be all wrong and have other people's voices involved. At the end of the day, this is a big aha for me. As I moved more senior into organization, it used to be data, the content was irrefutable, right? It's laying it out right in front of you, and so this is the direction we go based on a pro-con analysis. Okay? I started to realize as I got more senior up that the ratio between content and the relationship, it actually started to flip. And I would say by the time I left, 80% of every meeting to me was, how did the relationship go? Who cares how the content went? How did the relationship go? By prototyping all these new behaviors, and it took me a good year to kind of figure some of these things out, we got to this place where there was a shared vision. So that's taking the idea of prototyping what you've been told, the failures that you had, and applying them and reapplying them. So what's the payout for this? Well, like I said, innovate your strengths, keep your vices in check, okay? Get some new skills, a lot of new learning. And it does build character. It does give you courage. It does allow you to have agility and resilience because we have a different mindset about who we are. We're not perfect and we're not meant to be perfect. And when somebody tells us there's something that's not working, we're adaptable and we're a lot less defensive. At the end of the day, it's all about continuous improvement, not for our products, not for our projects, but for who we are and our brand. So that's how we can actually ingest a daily dose of failure to actually become better. So we've talked about 2 ways of actually using failure. One to get competitive intelligence, the other actually living with it kind of on a daily basis to do tweaks about who we are to actually become better. But every once in a while we're going to hit the big, epic failure, right? That sort of throws our whole system out of whack. So how might we use that to get competitive advantage? How can we actually use failure to make us more compelling? How can failure make you more compelling? All right, I think the best way is just to illustrate with an exercise here. All right, everyone's seen Lord of the Rings, right? Anyone not seen Lord of the Rings? Even my wife, who doesn't like sci-fi, has seen Lord of the Rings, okay? She loves it, actually, okay? So let's put on our innovator's hat, our problem solver's hat. What's the basic goal of Lord of the Rings? Destroy the ring, right? Not too difficult. Everyone agree with that? Pretty much that's the basic sort of the odyssey, the mission that we need to have, all right? So we're all innovators. Let's pretend we're at this big offsite together right now. They had an offsite in Rivendell, right? Okay. But they're not us, okay? These guys all have personal agendas. They all have egos. We're all cool people that, we're all about destroy the ring, right? So what did they come up with? Whew. Well, they came up with a solution that had some problems built in. Number one, I don't know if I trust a ring bearer who basically was like this, right? I mean, couldn't let it go. I mean, he even turned on his best friend. On top of that, their form of transportation, walking over snow and mountains and, orc-filled marshes and, I don't know, what is it? They went through caves with spiders. Wow. So, the ring bearer and the form of transportation. No, we'd be like, destroy the ring. Forget that, right, guys? Five of us could get together and we'd come up with a much better solution. Who would you pick to be the ring bearer? Who is probably the guy that is probably the less susceptible to the charm of the ring, right? Of course, Sam, right? So we pick Sam. Hey, Sam. All right? You're the ring bearer. And, none of us live in Middle Earth, but if we did, we'd probably be thinking about what's the FedEx equivalent in Middle Earth? Anyone guess? Yes! The Eagles, right? So if I was Gandalf, I'd be like, everyone shut up. This is what we're going to do, okay? Hey, Sam, get over here. I'm going to put this ring in a box that you can't touch and you can't access, okay? But it'll melt when it hits that damn lava, okay? All right, you hold it, okay? Hey, Eagle Baddie, get over here. Jump on him. Fly over there in like 4 hours. Can you make it back, okay? Dump it in, and we're done. Done with story, okay? No more sorrow. Done, okay? Isn't that more efficient, more effective? That's what we would have come up with, right? Yes, okay. Okay, here's the issue with that. Yeah, that is the issue with that, okay? So sometimes the most effective path to an answer is this. Now I want you guys to think about it. How often have you guys had to go and do a recommendation in front of your management team? And you guys prepared for it, and you have all the data, and it's all lining up, all the stars, the moons, the oceans, everything is lining up for your reco being a yes, okay? And then you present it, and you go, home run. How many of you done that? All of you, right? Okay. Here's what I tell my team. When you start off by opening up your soul. Okay, what? I go, yeah. Tell them that, when I began this project, I was over here. But I talked to that guy over that corner, and that person in the room, and this person, and they told me I was wrong. I go, what the hell? I'm not wrong. But, we tried my way over there, and it didn't work. And so then I did go back and listen and look at my notes and kind of reread. And I realized I was wrong because you were right, and you were right, and you were right. Whoa, they're like, are you serious? Like, you want me to admit that I was wrong in some place? That I actually had to pivot? Yes, I want you to do that. Why? Because I want you to tell the hero's journey of how we started off here thinking we were so hot shot and hot shit, and how we were totally wrong, but more importantly, how we climbed out of that with the help of everybody in the room to get to where the promised land was. We told a story. Stories aren't great unless there's some adversary or some challenge or some failure involved where you actually have to demonstrate courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. We all know this, right? Courage is the full 100% awareness of the fear, but the ability to look it in the face and say, I am going to overcome you. That's what courage is. I wanted our folks to seem courageous. I wanted them in the recovery process to be able to acknowledge the people in the room that helped them get there. I especially wanted them to acknowledge the people that start off hating the idea. Because once they were acknowledged as actually being part of the solution, being the magic elixir that we needed to fight off that Balrog in the mines of Morea, or to stop the arrows from, whatever it was, that's what we wanted them to be for us. How many times have you guys used the hero's journey in sharing a recommendation? How many times have you admitted where, we thought it was this, we were actually wrong? Milk it! If you fail, milk the damn thing, Obviously, if you fail, recover, and then milk it, of course. Then milk it! People love the idea that you are wrong, and you are okay with being wrong, but that you recovered from it, and that you use the rest of the organization to help you recover. Couple things from that. Think about this. So, couple things about milking it. Make the failure epic and own it. You own it, okay? That's first. 2, talk about the courageous recovery. All right? And then generous celebration. What I mean by generous is that you spread the wealth in terms of everybody that helped. You own the failure yourself, but you own you share the celebration with as many people as possible. And think about what happens in a room. 1, you tell a story. Stories are always much more compelling. 2, you have so much more credibility because you've actually failed in order to succeed. And so people know that that was a hard-fought battle. And you had doubts and you overcame them, and it was hard work. Here's what the payout is, guys. You actually gain sympathy and a lot of empathy. Everyone's failed. You've seen the movie Rudy, and you're like rooting for Rudy, when he goes on the field, right, and all that. You have empathy. It demonstrates 2 qualities which I think are really important as you present a recommendation. 1 is this idea of humility, to say, look, I didn't have all the answers. People like people who can admit they didn't have all the answers. But I had the courage to go find those answers and to leverage the resources in this room and across the organization to get to the right answer. And your recommendation is so much more solid and so much more credible because you actually used homework more than data. You actually used actual hard work and homework to get to the conclusion and use the people in the room to get you there. It makes you much more heroic. So next time you have an epic failure, don't just stay there. Just realize that it could turn into a wonderful story, maybe a couple months from now, but a wonderful story that you can tell that's going to help you win some big recommendation or win something else. One last personal story. About 1.5 years ago, this was October of 2015, it had been announced to the organization, and I spent that year pretty much in Europe working in our international office. And it was announced to the entire organization. We had this huge design symposium with 100 of our leaders in Europe, and it was announced that I was going to take on this new role, and I was head of innovation enterprise-wide, but I was going to take on a new role where I would not only head up innovation, I was going to head up design, I was going to head up branding, consumer insights, and strategy for our international group, which was 2/3 of our business, which was a huge promotion. It was a big, big deal. I was so excited. I spent literally 7-9 months in Europe trying to build that credibility to get to that promotion. 2 weeks later, we had an analyst report, and it was the first time we missed our numbers. Our stock dropped, I want to say, almost 20%. First time our numbers went down in I want to say 7 years. Well, they took some drastic actions, and one of those was to actually rescind my promotion. It was really tough. It was tough publicly because, I went from this some exalted kind of very proudful moment to one of shame and embarrassment. A lot of people ask me, what the hell happened? What'd you do wrong? And honest, here in this room, it wasn't all just about the stock. There were other issues that I had to own up later in terms of some relationships. And so it was a really tough time. But I didn't actually have a hard time doing a pivot because when it happened, my wife called me up, I explained what happened, and she said simply, honey, epic. Damn right, epic! I left VF. I'm on my journey to write a book, to do more things like this in terms of being able to share and talk about experiences. I'm having fun. And if it wasn't for that epic moment, I wouldn't be up here on this new journey. So think of that next time you guys have an epic episode. That there's something cool is going to happen from that. And that recovery is going to be a story you're going to tell people and they're going to love. So, look. Sum it up. I've got 1 minute and 32 seconds. Perfect time here, okay? you can create personal advantage through failure. And get smart, right? Because that's going to make you self-aware. The gift of self-awareness is so powerful, especially when most people don't have it. You have it. You know who likes you, who doesn't, why they don't like you. You know what you can do with that now. Use that information to continually prototype and improve who you are. All right? And that means having actually kind of a weekly dose of a little bit of failure. You know, fail fast, learn a lot. Apply that to yourself. And lastly, when all hell breaks loose, you become heroic and you become compelling. Why is that good? Because this is what the rest of the world treats failure. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be part of it. They don't want to dwell in it. And so they'll never harness the value that you guys will be able to. They'll probably never have as many failure experiences as everybody in this room, because that's who we signed up for. But we know what to do with it. And so not only do we get more exposure to the gold in them hills, we know how to mine those hills, right? So I love this quote by Winston Churchill. Stumbling with enthusiasm. I like that word, enthusiasm. Last year we had a speaker. I don't know if you guys were here last year, but his name is Frank Stephenson. He is the head designer for McLaren. He used to be the head designer for BMW, for Ferrari, whatnot. I had a man crush on him. That guy was just really cool. Okay, I'm getting some head nods, okay? I mean, he failed throughout his whole life. At one point, he tried to be a professional wrestler, a professional bodybuilder. He was in the motorcycling circuit. He actually was a semi-professional baseball player, professional baseball player in Japan. He failed at all those things, and finally his dad at like 23, 24 said, you're kind of a loser, dude. Look, you gotta go back to college or work in my car dealership. So he decided he went back to college, and he went to design school, art school at Pasadena. Rest is history. But he was never afraid of failing. And the one quality I liked about him is this idea of enthusiasm. He really reminded me of the Dos Equis guy. Remember Dos Equis guy? So, as we stumble, guys, let's do it with enthusiasm, right? And so I'll leave this with you guys. Stay thirsty, my friends. Thank you.